Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Michelle Davidson and I'm joined today by Olivia Ruff from RN Trust. Welcome to Trusted Talk.
Thank you, Michelle.
Tell us about your PKI journey and how did you get to work in our industry, or what attracted you to PKI?
Okay, let's summarize 30 years in 30 seconds. I have started my career in the army, and it's a place where risk can actually kill you. Because this develops a set of very specific skills in analyzing, avoiding, and mitigating risk. And I kept that background with me all the time. And then I moved to IT from Army in days where the internet did not yet exist. So that tells you how young I am. I've worked for many, many years in identity and access management with Novell products. And just for the fun, for example, on 9/11, I was actually delivering an identity and access management project in Paris. And in 2009, basically as part of an identity project, I had to be involved in trusted identity for the customer. And that's the first time I touched the world of PKI certificates and all those wonderful things. And then I followed a colleague to OpenTrust, a French PKI software editor. And since then, I've developed that field. So for OpenTrust, I was focusing on the emerging markets as a pre-sales engineer and consultant and trader. And that's how really I get my fingers stuck in the PKI world. And for me, one of the most fascinating things with PKI is you establish trust by only exchanging public information. And that's when you think about it, that's quite amazing. And the same technology gives us confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. So it's our own CIA triad for us. And I think the last thing that kept me in the world of PKI is this magic integration of people, process, and technology that you need to get together correctly set up, correctly working together to have a proper PKI design.
So what is your it's an amazing journey into the world of PKI, and so what is your current focus for your customers at RN Trust?
So right now our current focus at RN Trust is automation and PCI DSS v4. So automation comes basically as a side effect of the recent Apple and Google initiatives towards shortening the lifespan of certificates, and that makes the customer a lot more hungry for automation. No one can survive with certificate valid for only 47 days without automation. So the draft is not approved yet in the CEB forum, but it's coming. There are plenty of good reasons for the life of the certificate to be shortened. So the customers slowly start to say, okay, we need to do something. But there is another trend we see a lot in the Middle East now is Kubernetes adoption. So we were a little bit slow to start on Kubernetes, but now it's going fast, and DevSecOps, they need to be able to automate the certificate issuance. So it's also a very, very good topic where we discuss with customers and how they can automate things.
Has that been an evolution?
Yeah, as you said, it's a very noticeable change in the landscape of PKI over the few years. CLM basically came very popular solution, and somehow basically they replaced the registration authority for corporate and web PKIs in many cases, and they bring single pane of glass that force team that used not to talk together. The web PKI people who buy the publicly trusted certificate, they not used to talk to the corporate guys much. But now because the CLM is there and unified both words, they do have to talk together. So it also brings a lot of interesting side effects, I would say, in customers and in organization where you see, I know, but it's not me. Yeah, but still you as well. There is also something that is happening now, and it's interesting, is PCI DSS v4. Because till now, PCI DSS didn't care much about certificates and keys and algorithm, but now on the version 4, they have added 3 small lines. It's very small in the big book, but that really touch the quality of the certificates, the inventory, the trusted keys, the replication. So we see payment industry, banks and other providers realizing that, oh my God, I need to inventory my certificates, I need to be okay. So once again, it's a good push for certificate lifecycle management solutions.
And would you say that has been a shift over the last couple of years for RN Trust in kind of the direction, or would you say that's kind of a similar trajectory? Obviously, I know you mentioned the potential changes coming with Google and Apple's proposals, but would you say that is a shift in the industry?
Definitely the CLM is a shift, because before that you had corporate PKI project, but we didn't talk much about automation. Acme was there, but people did not really look at it. And now you have proper platforms that provide you a lot of service around your certificate, the inventory, the enrollment, the automation, and it's really a change in what we used to do. I remember the first PKI project I've done a long time back. We focused on notification. We had like notification 90 days before expiration, 45 days, 30 days, 15 days, because we know people forget to renew certificate. Now with CLM and automation, we don't have notification anymore. Well, we have notification in case the automation didn't work. So this is a huge change. And we also changed the enrollment and the establishment of the identity of the seller, because now with automation, basically you rely always on the first issuance. When you enroll the seller the first time, that's where you validate that you're the legitimate owner of that seller and it's a legitimate seller, and maybe you have some ticket in your ITSM platform to justify that it's a legitimate enrollment. But once that's done, you just recycle the same certificate again and again. You use the previous identity to get a new one. Pretty much like when you renew your passport, you bring the old passport, you get a new one. So this is a change in many areas, where before you had to make the request, submit it, and so on. Now the automation has removed all that. And I think that's good, because it was people not always understand correctly why we have these heavy requirements when we issue a certificate. Like, oh, why do I need to have an ITSM ticket to get my corporate server certificated? Come on. It's by doing less of this identity validation, we do it once for good at the beginning. It's easier to interact with server managers and tell them, okay, we need to do that one time because we need to be sure that it's a legitimate server.
It's a really interesting point. And also, I really like your analogy about the passport. That's like, it's true. You do get that passport identification. You get it kind of once, and then you are renewing it all the time. And that's what the automation helps to support the IT teams with those certificates. You touched on digital trust earlier, and I really want to pick into that a little bit more. And it's been an ongoing conversation for decades, let's be honest, but it's recently come back into the limelight. I think we might have touched on it, but why do you think this is?
The trust is basically a lot of things, I would say, brought by the identity and the trust in the front of the stage. And I've listed a few of them, like cloud adoption, COVID, Wi-Fi 6, IoT, and cybercrime. That's the one that pops in my mind. The cloud is a very interesting thing, because we move the compute resource outside of the perimeter of the company. So yes, it's my resource, but it's not in my place anymore. It's outside. And you need to have proper machine identity and validation and trust. Like, I give the example of the CRM. You don't want to put your key client information in a rogue CRM. So when you connect to that CRM application, you need to be sure that it is your CRM, not a spy CRM would try to steal your customers. And then the only way to get that is with trusted machine identity. So basically, it's the passport of the server. Now, when you connect to it, you validate that this is your server, and you trust the authority who said, yes, this is my server. So this is a key element in the cloud. And if you look at all the things that goes now with customer having multiple cloud, and now you start to have as well software-defined networks, and we put bricks of IT, bricks of connections, bricks of data in many places. And the only way we can be sure that we're talking to the right element is with the trust. And the trust comes from the certificates, and comes from the certification authority, and comes from everything that goes over it. So that's one area where definitely cloud has pushed the need again for proper digital identity and trust.
Again, it's a really interesting point. And I really like the way that you described how internal trust allows you to provide customer trust. But it's not just your internal trust with your machine identities within the company, but it's where that trust comes from, like a CA. That whole chain of trust in the digital world is so important. And that's a really interesting point. So talking about trust then, how do you think companies can work to future-proof their digital security through that element of trust?
I would use two words: education and budget. And so it's education. But I think the challenge here is that information security officers, they need to educate higher management on cybersecurity. There is a huge lack of understanding in C-suite about cybersecurity. So it's just an IT stuff. But no, it's not an IT stuff. It's the company stuff. It's if your IT is down, then you stop working. And we just saw that with the CrowdStrike event. It has been a massive problem forward. It was not an attack, it was a failure, but the world stopped. Airlines stopped. And this is a crucial problem. And even the World Economic Forum has a working group on that topic. So cybersecurity is a key element. And you even see government initiatives like in Australia who have put frameworks to help company address that. If you look in Europe now, we have NIS2 and DORA who basically fine company who don't have proper cybersecurity and resilience. So this is huge because it has economical impact, and it has economical impact to touch the people. We just experienced that with CrowdStrike. People in the US with the pipeline who got hacked also experienced problem because there was gasoline outage for some time. So cybersecurity is vast, but in that area, this PKI and digital trust is a key component because it allows so many things. And for now, it's the only unbreakable element. Everything has been broken. MFA has been broken. Password has been broken. Phone authentication is super broken. But till now, PKI and certificate authentication is not broken. And once you get the upper level, the C-suite, to understand the cybersecurity needs and what needs to be put in place, the next step is increase the budget. Wavestone has published in their cyber benchmark in 2023 a scary number. The average cybersecurity budget is only 5.6% of the global IT budget. And for me, it is super scary. So once you get a little bit more money, the first thing of action is education again. We all know PEPCAC, right? Problem exists between chair and keyboard. It's an IT support joke, but it's cybersecurity reality. The weakest point is the user. And enterprise should educate their users to empower them and to help them become the first line of defense. And there are plenty of things that we can do to make our user, I would say, more robust. One of them is certificate-based authentication. If you use certificate-based authentication, there is no more password. The phishing guy can phish as much as he wants. He will not get your private key or your certificate. He can get your certificate, it's public, but he will not get your private key. So we have technological ways, easy ways, to help our users become the first line of defense. Education, put the right technology in place, and that would make things a lot better for companies to be ready. But the next step, and it's a step that is very often forgotten, is disaster recovery and business continuity plans. And people will tell you, well, I'm in the cloud, I'm all good. But no, there was, I don't know if you heard about Unisuper incident last May. It's a funny, not really funny. There was a misconfiguration on the cloud provider and boom, all the virtual machines of Unisuper were deleted at night. So you come in the morning, you don't have any IT at all. Finish. And ransomware is also very, cloud doesn't care about it because you don't have file backup, you have VM backup. So your files are encrypted and you have a cool encrypted backup of your own files. So cloud is not an answer. And people don't say, no, I'm in the cloud, I'm good. But the wake-up call might be extremely painful for the customers.
A couple of things I want to take from that. Firstly, I want to look at the continuity point that you made about business continuity with the budgets. I think that's quite a common myth that once within businesses, at least, that once PKI is done, that's it, job done and dusted. But what you've alluded to there And what I kind of know from my position in the industry is that is not the case at all. You do need those documents and those procedures in place to enable business continuity. You've raised a few examples in this call today, in the podcast today, about how instances where they have just stopped. And it's not just been one place and one area, it's been global. And that's been a long-term effects for multiple businesses. The other thing I wanted to just raise on is like PKI seems quite a foundational point of cybersecurity. Would you agree with that?
You start to look at your IT assets in a more precise way, not just a big word, it's my IT. Then you identify things and you identify different rules to manage different items differently. And you can also start to think about, okay, what happens if an employee leaves the company and come back to the company? Is it the same employee? Is it a different employee? You have to have all those talks about, okay, I will put the name of my employee in the certificate as an identification. But many times you have people say, no, but I want also to put the department, or I want also to put the position. And no, you are you. It's not your passport. You are you. You are you as a director, or you are you as a simple employee. You're still you. So this forces people to think way more about what things are, a human, a machine, how you identify them, why you identify them. And I think it brings a lot of clarity of the landscape and the risks that you have to face when you do cybersecurity. And this is a foundation. In that point, it's a foundation. After that, you do the exercise, you do your key ceremony. And it's also a very, I would say, interesting moments, because you get those non-IT people, you lock them in the room for 2 or 3 hours while we generate our key, and they basically don't understand what's happening. So you have to explain to them that, okay, what we are doing here is the foundation of the trust of the company, because we're just generating. Nowadays, we're still doing RSA, so we're just picking 2 large prime numbers and making things with it. And then we say, this is us, and believe me, because I say so, because that's a self-signed certificate. It's like if you make your own passport yourself. This is me, then you sign it, and you try to cross the border with it. It's not going to work very well. So you explain to those people, that's the foundation of the trust, and we're going to build on that foundation. So that's why we make an offline CA, that's why we make a ceremony. That's why we have all those papers that you will need to sign each and every pages to prove that this happened really, and that these numbers really represent your company. And after that, you bring a lot of awareness. Like, oh no, it's not a joke. My certificates are something serious, because they witness the fun part of doing the key ceremony. And every 2 years, we meet again to do the ARL signature. So that keeps the momentum, that keeps this level of awareness to a few high-ranking individuals in the company. This is no joke. And I think that's where the foundation is. After that, the application, if you look, of all we can do with PKI, like TLS, authentication, signature, encryption, this only works because we have the initial trust.
That's a really important point. And it comes back around to what we were talking about earlier about the digital trust, that chain of trust, the foundation of trust. It goes throughout the whole PKI journey. What is, just a couple more points, and then I think we'll come to a close. What is the one thing IT professionals should start doing now to improve their security posture?
I would say brace for impact. More seriously, be prepared for the next cyber attack that's going to hit your company, because it's not a question of will it, it's a question of when. So that circle back to what we discussed before, to the business continuity and disaster recovery things. And the other thing is keep yourself updated of post-quantum cryptography. PQC is coming fast. You're talking about 5 years, 10 years. It's tomorrow. When we look at the time the PKI world and the cryptography took the move away from some weak algorithm saying we're going to be ready for PQC in 5 years, it's scary. By the way, the PKI consortium is having an event right now on that topic, and the videos are on YouTube, so people could go and watch them if they're not totally aware of it. But the interesting part is getting ready for PQC. That will give you a chance to tighten all loose ends of your current setups. You will find way too small keys, you will find weak algorithm, you will find self-signed certificate, all sorts of ugly things. And because PQC plans start with an inventory, you will get a chance to know better your environment. And that will also help you, strengthen the security a little bit more than what you have currently.
And that's really interesting, but you're right, post-quantum is coming. The timeline is still very unknown at the moment, like you've alluded to, but bracing yourself, I think that is a very important takeaway that listeners should take on board. Olivier, let's look at a potential myth that we could bust here in the podcast. What would you say is a myth buster of the PKI industry?
My favorite myth is around our hardware security modules. Those devices where we store the keys inside and they are safe and they cannot be stolen. And it's the foundation of the trust. Remember, we discussed about trust and the fact that those are just numbers. So you need to protect the private keys at all costs, and we put that in a hardware security module. And there is a very common misconception on customers is that, my keys are in an HSM, so I am safe. Nothing bad can happen to me. And this is a total myth, because the HSM will prevent that the key gets stolen, but it will not prevent misuse of the keys. Security must be seen as a whole, not just block by block. Basically, sometimes it's just like installing an armor door on a shoji paper wall in those Japanese homes. So the HSM is the armored door, but if you don't have proper process, technology, and global view of the security topic, then you're just doing nothing. And when we discuss hardware setup with the customer, sometimes they are shocked when I discuss CCTV cameras, dual lock racks, paper logs, key ceremonies, Coral-based administration. They say, wow, come on, it's not Fornox. No, it is Fornox. Those keys, the trust of your company. If you let a rogue admin do something, you just voided the entire trust. So I've said it many times, but only by combining people, process, and technology, you can get proper security. And HSM is not an all insurance against every bad thing.
Very interesting. Finally, then, let's kind of end with a fun one. What is the one piece of tech that you could not live without?
So in my personal life, it's a GPS. Because every weekend I drive in the desert. I'm based in Dubai, so we have the chance to have beautiful deserts in the region. And on a more serious topic, that would be TLS and WebPKI. Because without them, there is nothing, no more banking, no more online payment, no more online security. And I have a wish that at the CAB forum mandate stronger controls before issuing certificates, so that we as users or relying parties, as we say in our PKI world, have a better insurance on the identity of the server and the owner of the server. All those phishing attacks that mimics the website of whatever, and they still have a TLS certificate, because at the end, the less secure certificates just validate the name of the server. So I used to say, not all certificates are made equal, and some are more equal than others. And the basic ones, the most basic ones, we call it domain validated or DV. And what you get is that that the guy who requested the certificate is the legitimate administrator of that server, or at least the TLS name. That's not much, but you have a guy who was able to request a certificate. And that's how all the phishing website works. They just have domain validated certificates. You have the little padlock on your browser. You feel safe, but in fact, you're not really safe. And in the more equal family of certificates, there's the one called organization validated. So where you validate the name of the server and the fact that the administrator is the legitimate administrator of that things, but you also request legal documents. So like trade license, or even as the individual users, that could be my passport, a copy of my passport, or something like that. So now not only I know that, the server has a legitimate administrator and he was able to prove he's a legitimate administrator, but I also have some legal information on who that guy is. So maybe because I'm a PKI guy, I'm probably the only one who click on the padlock to see what is the certificate. But I would make the life of the bad guy a little bit more difficult. And I'm confident giving my credit card number on an OV certificate. When it's a DV website, I only use one-time use credit card numbers, because there's 50% chance that it's a bad guy on the other side. So that's my piece of tech I cannot live without Ping.
No, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that is all we have time for today. And I really would like to thank you for taking your time to join us today, Olivier. And for those who joined in, subscribe, follow, and until next time, this has been Trusted Talk.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Michelle.
Thank you for tuning into Trusted Talk, the Digital Certificate and Identity Security podcast. Today's episode wasn't just about information, it was about arming you with the knowledge to make critical security decisions immediately. If this episode gave you practical takeaways, don't wait. Subscribe to Trusted Talk on your favorite podcast platform and consider leaving a review to help other security professionals discover these essential insights. For even more urgent resources, like regulatory updates and automation tools, head over to globalsign.com. Join us next time as we tackle another pressing topic in digital identity and crypto agility. Until then, stay proactive, stay secure, and thank you for listening.